We're all looking at the van in our own skeptical ways, fighting back the fear we all had, but none of us admitted. We are about to travel into a war zone as international human rights observers. I had been to Mexico many times before, but never to its southern state of Chiapas. For tourists, Chiapas was known for its Mayan archaeological sites such as Palenque and the high mountain colonial town of San Cristobal de las Casas. However, we were going to neither of these places. The conflict zone was well off the main paved roads and out of the world's eyes. $3.5 million people live in Chiapas, 2/3 in rural communities. Half do not have potable water, 2/3 no sewage service. 50% suffer from malnutrition despite being in a state with abundant natural resources. More than 1 million indigenous people, mainly Mayan, inhabit this land and have been fighting for their lives, vision of life, and resources for more than 500 years. First against the Spanish, then against the elite Mexican government, and now against corporate globalization, which consists of all of the above. These were the people who on January 1st, 1994, rose up from this reality and briefly took over 5 important Chiapan cities. The Mexican government, the support of the United States, responded by sending in the military. 5 years later, the military had solidly entrenched itself in the conflict zone. This is what they told us in July of 1999, before we stood nervously in front of the van. This is low-intensity warfare, they explained. But yes, you are going into a war zone. The rules were as follows. Immigration was guarding all roads into the conflict area, and they were targeting foreigners. We had to arrive after midnight. This was because at the end of the day they were bureaucrats, we were told, and were asleep promptly at midnight. The second rule was the alibi. We are not in fact going to a Zapatista community, but to the tourist paradise of Laguna Miramar, which just happened to be in the middle of the conflict zone. Third, if we were from a non-Spanish speaking country, we didn't speak Spanish, not a word. The fourth rule was to leave anything that might be considered quote-unquote leftist at home, and it was the fourth rule that I broke. As soon as we pulled out in the van heading towards the conflict zone, I realized that I had the Mexican daily La Jornada. We quickly threw it out the window. We drove to the town of Comitán de Domínguez, where we ate tacos. And little did I know that this would be the last time I would see electricity for a month. As promised, immigration was asleep when we entered the conflict zone at 12:30 a.m. Along with the electricity, the pavement also ended. We now officially left all that I knew about life. The corn appeared almost instantaneously, as if it had been waiting for us all along. There was something that made it feel alive as the stalks leaned over the dirt road. It was as if the corn indeed had eyes and was tender and powerful, more powerful than any army, as the Zapatistas contended. But I didn't know this at the time. When we all had to get out because we had to push the van across a stream, it was the first time I had set foot in a war zone. And there it was, beautiful. Every jungle insect was an orchestra. The stars were so sharp and clear, unlike anything I had ever seen. What I felt here was more peaceful than anything I'd ever felt. It was difficult to imagine the conflict, poverty, guns, injustice, military. I must have fallen asleep after we got back into the van and drove on. I woke up to several soldiers standing at a smoky checkpoint. Their weapons silhouetted the flames of the fire that licked up and sparked behind them. First, I thought there were only 4. Then there were 20. I exited the van disoriented. It was 4 a.m. One soldier held a video camera right on my face, as if Big Brother had gotten seriously aggressive. Laguna Miramar, we're going to Laguna Miramar, we told them. As the soldiers barked questions, searched our bags, and kept us detained for 2 hours, I realized the peace I felt when we stepped out of the van was the illusion of a white man who has lived a privileged life and has never seen war. Laguna Miramar, we're going to Laguna Miramar, we insisted. It was not only the physical and psychological war of barking soldiers, military hardware, with the United States stamp of approval, but also a war that pits the poor against the rich, and it pits one way of viewing life against another, one cosmovision against another one. For the next month, I will think back to the peace of the jungle stars, and to the terror that I felt with the soldiers. And as we left the soldiers and entered the Zapatista community, I knew this was the Tojolabal Mayans' life. A life that faced constant harassment from the soldiers. And it was a life that encompassed the peace and the dignity of the stars. Touching the soil underneath the corn was like touching the soul of the land, of the rivers, of the sky. By the time we left the soldiers that morning, and entered deep into Zapatista territory, I knew I never would be the same again.